The protection of wisdom is like the protection of money. The advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of those who have it. And now, here's Reverend Sue.
Got joy in my soul. God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn.
Good evening, and thank you for joining again. Sunday evening with Reverend Sue. Our guest today is Miss Erica Van Cross, and she is such an advocate for historically Black colleges and universities. She didn't start yesterday. She's been doing it for a long time where other people didn't do too much. There's still people now do not know what HBC represent or understand what HBCs are all about. And she is a CEO of the Communication Forum. I'm gonna let her talk about that for a few minutes when we get down to the end. But today there was an article in the USA the other day, a few days ago, and it brought some things to my attention. That talking about funding and how some Ivy League schools are receiving funds. I mean, a lot of money, and HBCUs are not. We want to talk about that. Erica, to me, is one of the most knowledgeable person I think that I know here in the United States. I should really digging into HBCUs, saving some HBCUs. You don't hear her name out there, but she have saved some HBCUs. And today we're going to talk about this because I think it would affect all of us. HBCU, historically Black college and university, HBCU. So thank you for joining us, Miss Erica.
Thank you, Reverend Sue. That is, it's an honor to be here, and that was a wonderful introduction. And I'm so grateful to you for providing a platform to talk about our HBCUs, our historically Black colleges and universities, the necessity for them, where they stand today, and how we can ensure their survival and thriving. I am just humbled to be on your show because I know you're a strong advocate for social justice, and I just appreciate the opportunity. I started out probably from the womb being an advocate for HBCUs. I come from 4 generations of HBCU attendees. My mother went to Cheney, very proud of that. We love to say that they are the first Black HBCU founded 36 years before Wilberforce, but we love all of our HBCUs. But our family school, the school that my grandmother and my great-grandmother, class of 1916, was Knoxville College, which is in Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee. So we are, and then I have other family members who went to Howard and have ties to other HBCUs. So it's important that we understand them in their historical context, what they contribute, where they stand today, and how we can get them to continue and thrive. So thank you so very much, Reverend Sue. I appreciate it.
Now, I don't know if you read the article from USA.
I did read it. Yes, ma'am.
And I guess for people who have not read the article, is we're talking about funding, how HBCU can really receive funding for so many organizations. And if they do, what happened after they receive the funds? I had a kind of the issue, perhaps you can correct me in this, is that comparing it with Ivy League universities versus HBCUs. Not saying that HBCUs are not Ivy League, because I think they are. I think we play with terms, because I was reading that over majority of our doctors come from HBCUs. lawyers come from HBCUs, and we can go on and on and on. So how do you feel about that? Comparing, the study is comparing Ivy League universities with HBCUs. And the reason I'm saying this, because I look at the people who graduated from some of the Ivy League school who actually own the corporations and organizations that we're talking about.
That's right. That's right. I thought it was a necessary comparison because I thought I did read the article in USA Today, number one. The article starts out by comparing how much Ivy League schools have acquired in funding versus collectively our 99 HBCUs. Now there are only and there are less than 15 Ivy League schools. In fact, I could name them, but the point is this: there are about 10 Ivy League schools, roughly 10 to 12 Ivy League schools. They're all in the East Coast. The southernmost is the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, where I'm from, and West Philadelphia, and they go all the way up to New Hampshire, where Dartmouth is. And in between those, you have Harvard and Yale and Cornell, and of course, my beloved Columbia. So you're comparing roughly 10 schools to 99 schools, and you're talking about the collective funding. So I thought it was important that they showed what the Ivy League schools, this handful of schools, receive versus what 99, so at least 9 times the number of schools get. And it shows, first of all, that what HBCUs receive in funding is paltry as compared to what the Ivy League schools get. And what it also shows is the money is out there. So we can take off the table, there's no money out there. No, there's money out there. The Ivy League is acquiring that money. So now we have to examine why it is our schools are not receiving the money, and that's critical.
So we're talking about we're not receiving because we do not deal with the products for us on social media. We do not do podcasts. We do not let people know that we're in need. Is that correct?
I think that is a part of it, but I think the greater issue here is a bigger issue. These schools at the Ivy League have strong development departments. A development department is responsible for acquiring the funding, spending it properly, because when you acquire funding, the person who gives you money tells you how you have to spend it. Now, they may say, it's up to you. Those are called discretionary funds. It is at your discretion as an institution how you spend this money I give you. But most funders have specific requirements by which they agree to give you the money. And funders will ask you, okay, you're going to have to tell me via a written report how you spent this money. And you're going to have to back that up with proof. So all of that is part of development. The other part of development is cultivating the relationship. That means knowing the cycle by which a funder gives out this money. You can't say, well, I need money in December, so I'm coming to you in November. Their funding cycle was probably last year for this year. So one thing the development department has to do, they have to know the funding cycle. They have to cultivate the relationship. And that has a lot to do with the image of the school. If the funder has a negative image of the school or no image of the school, they're likely going to give money to people with whom they have a relationship. If the development department gets that money, that means they've, filled out the paperwork, sent in the requirements, whatever those requirements are, by the deadline, in the format that was asked, and they were selected to receive money, you then have to continue to cultivate the relationship. Think of it like your mother's friend, maybe an aunt. Your aunt gives you money on your birthday, but if you don't even say thank you, if you see her at church next week and don't speak, what do you think is going to happen the next year when it's time for your birthday? She's going to say, well, that she wasn't very grateful or appreciative. And
so you're saying that we receive funds, we of HBCU receive funds and do not say thank you? I mean, the alumni,
Anyway.
I mean, you know that from experience?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I can give several examples. But the problem tends to be, if we get the money, if first of all, we're not in the funding cycle. So we're not competitive. It's like being a sprinter. You want to be in the Olympics, but you don't want to practice or go to the combines. Okay, but now you're in the Olympics. When you get the money, if you're lucky enough to get the money, then you have to continue to cultivate that relationship with the funder. And oftentimes we skip that. We come back when we need more money. And like anybody else who donates anything, if you don't appear appreciative,
Mhm.
or if you appear that you are not maintaining the standards by which they gave you the money, they're not going to give you any more money. They're just not going to do it. And they have boards who they answer to. So if the board will say, well, okay, we gave to this school. Have we heard from them? Did they use it for what we said they were going to do? And what else are they doing? That's important too. If those answers aren't properly addressed to the board that is responsible for this money, well, guess what's getting ready to happen? You're not going to get any more money, because there are plenty of people who want money. Now, if you also don't have a relationship with this funder, then they're going to, rightfully so, give their money to people with whom they have a relationship. So all of this is part of a strong development office, not a person, because this is a multi-person task. It is not a person. It is a development office. And every single HBCU should be heavily invested in a development office, because I know the Ivy Leagues are. Now, here's another thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know I'm excited. So, with all of that, should HBCU solicit money from white corporations, or
absolutely
with blacks?
No, absolutely. Solicit it from everyone. Mm-hmm. Everyone. You should. I mean, why would I not, if I had a communications firm, and I do, why would I not solicit money from Comcast, which is a major communications firm? So in other words, everybody who is offering money, who fits, within, of course, your parameters, you should absolutely, whether they're white, whether they're African American, whether they're Hispanic, you should go for the money as it relates to your need. Absolutely. Now, you have to then organize all that, because there are a lot of funders out there. I'll give you an example. NASA. NASA has been a major funder of activities at Hampton University for years, scientific endeavors by Hampton University. Do you know why? Because that president, and this is not a knock against any of the other presidents, but that president actively interacted, actively solicited, actively showed NASA that, hey, we're a good fit for what you guys do. All things scientific. I'll give you another example. The president of South Carolina State. He comes from the business world. I believe he was an executive at AT&T. When he took over South Carolina State, he went out after money from, among others, AT&T. That's a natural fit. And he got that money, and that money goes toward the students and for the benefit of their education. Now, here's the other thing I didn't get to mention. The development person has to be able to say to the potential funder, our school is doing these things. These are all the things our school is doing, and these are wonderful. So reputation is important. I think that is an absolute component of why HBCUs lack in funding, because for whatever reason, and there may be a myriad, HBCUs traditionally have not been seen as a viable option for giving funds to those institutions. For what now, some will say it's racism, some will say something else. And this is where I hold our vice president up so very highly, because she has elevated the conversation about HBCUs. She is a Howard graduate. She is a proud Howard graduate. And she has said, look, I'm the vice president. Before I was the vice president, I was a U.S. Senator. Before I was a U.S. Senator, I was the first Attorney General for the state of California who is Black. So you can go and get an excellent education at an HBCU. But what HBCUs would do well to do is equip their development team with these wonderful reputational nuggets. Because the development person is your liaison between the funding world and the institution, the educational institution. And that development team and that development person, they need to be able to say, we're doing all these wonderful things. See where you can participate, see where you can be a part of, look at all these wonderful things. And if they have to be able to secure that reputation and elevate that reputation in the eyes of the funder, because we can't, one thing that's not successful is going in, and I'm not saying that anybody has done this, but what is not successful is going in with an attitude of entitlement. We're so and so, so give us this. Nobody wants to participate in that. Nobody. So the development person has to be equipped with all of the wonderful things that their school is doing and be able to articulate it and show a pattern of positivity. You have to make it worth the funder's while.
I'm thinking about all of this funding, and I also thinking about the alumni influence.
Yes.
I mean, how many of us actually would go back and contribute to our school, our universities?
We've talked about that.
Very sad. And when you say the HBCUs are excellent universities.
Absolutely.
But I said before, put out the doctors and the judges more so than the other schools.
Absolutely. So, no question.
So the question would be also the alumni influence, as well as being as brilliant, I believe, that leaders of some of HBCUs. Why don't we have a development team? This is 2023.
Right.
People get money. Grant programs are announced every year from federal government, period. Not private, but federal government dealing with education. So why aren't we sitting there and actually applying for those funds and having the right people educated enough to know what they're doing and apply for funds?
That's my question.
When you go back and say that, thank you. I mean, if you receive funds, you don't know when people are going to review your program. You should be ready all the time, 24/7. That's just the way you do business. So to me, is a development, but also be business-like. Now, you worked on a university in Pennsylvania. That school was almost closing, to the point, almost closed doors. Thank God the school is operating now, university, but almost closed doors.
Yes.
And I'm looking at some schools and I'm saying, why is this happening? We have to be true to ourselves as well.
We do.
What are we doing at the universities as leaders? Are we really doing the business like we should be doing business, or some of us relax and the schools are falling? I don't know. You're the expert. I'm just looking at what I see and what I read.
Reverend Sue, I think you bring up an excellent point, because you and I have talked about this, and our mutual friend, the late Dr. Alicia Peterson, was a tremendous advocate of HBCUs, taught at Howard in the Urban Studies Department, was a graduate of Cheney in Pennsylvania. But one of the things I asked, and I worked with their alumni Cheyney's alumni, the late Paul Turner in particular, is we talked about the roadblocks to these successes. Why is it that this is happening? One of the things that I have found and that Mr. Turner had found and others is that there's a lot of institutionalization that prevents modernization. And I'll say it this way. Just because we used to do it XYZ way does not mean that's an effective way in 2023. People are resistant to change because their identities are so locked and loaded into their title, perhaps, or because they find it to be a turf war. This is my piece of the world. I'm going to do it this way and I'm going to block everybody else. But I find that that is detrimental to the HBCUs' success and even survival. We have to get past the institutionalization of doing things the way we used to do, because that's not the way that is most successful. And
so if you have
that,
we have a couple more minutes, like 1 minute. I'm sorry to cut you off. There's so much to talk about. But if you right now, with 1 minute, what can you tell us? 3 things that we need to start immediately with HBCUs. Just with 1 minute.
1 minute. With HBCUs, we need to assemble strong professional development teams, not somebody who may want to do it but does not have the expertise or the connections. A lot of this is connections. So the first thing you do is break down those silos of the institutionalization of the way we used to do it. Simultaneously, you have to assemble strong development teams, not one person. It takes a team of experts. The third thing is you have to make the relationships with the funders. You have to identify funders. You have to make the relationships with the funders. You cannot do it any other way. You can't do it the way you used to do it. So we have to put that to the side. We also cannot whine that we're not getting the funding because we're not showing ourselves as competitive, even though you and I and so many HBCU supporters and alums know that we provide an excellent education. And finally, to your point on alums, the alums would be engaged if you had a proper development team. That's part of what development does. They also engage alums. You don't just call them or write them at Christmas and ask for a donation. You have to work within a cycle and do constant positive outreach. That, in addition to receiving the money from the funders, cultivating that relationship, identifying new funders. You also have to travel to visit these funders and let them know that, hey, this is what we're doing. We thank you so much. And guess what? We're going to do this too. And so it's an active engagement. The 3 things are break down those institutional silos, get an excellent development team, and get within the cycle, make those relationships.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have so much to talk about. It's a very important subject for our listeners. Please engage with what's going on in reference to funding for historically Black colleges and universities.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Miss Erica. It's good to see you again. May God continue to bless you and give you the power to continue to make a difference with our colleges and universities.
Thank you so much, Reverend Sue. God bless you.
And you've been listening to Sunday Evening with Reverend Sue. So please, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. You will not be disappointed. Take care.
I like this part right there. Come on. Sing